guys. Tonight we're wandering into the warm, golden sands of ancient Egypt. A place where the sun sets like molten gold and the air buzzes with the quiet hum of desert insects. Picture this. You're standing at the edge of an ancient construction site, the sheer sides of a colossal pyramid rising like a mountain of stone. The air tastes dry, like a piece of stale bread left out too long. The workers are covered in sweat and dust, their linen skirts sticking to their legs as they haul massive limestone blocks, their voices drifting across the sand in tired chants. And somewhere inside, deep within those corridors of cut stone, a pharaoh, yes, a real crown-wearing, eyeliner-loving pharaoh, has somehow gotten himself stuck. Imagine that for a moment, the ruler of the entire kingdom, trapped in a giant pile of rocks. You sure wouldn't have made it, between the heat, the dust, and let's not even talk about the total lack of air conditioning. Honestly, you'd be toast in there. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with your location and time. Let's see who's out there joining us on this sleepy little journey across time. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The sand crunches under your feet as you move forward, a soft, dry sound like crushed cornflakes. The pyramid looms ahead, its limestone casing glowing faintly in the moonlight, while the stars flicker like tiny lamps in the endless night sky. You imagine the workers, moving by torchlight, their faces streaked with sweat, dragging sledges over logs and wet sand. The smell of heated stone lingers in the air, mixing with the faint, almost floral scent of burning resin used in rituals. You pause for a moment, squinting up at the pyramid's face, and you catch sight of a few small carvings, little doodles scratched into the stone by bored workers. There's a figure of a cat, tail curled, sitting smugly. Someone even etched a little stick figure holding a loaf of bread next to what you guess might be a fish. You can't help but smile. Some things never change, huh? As you step closer, you hear a low, distant rumble, almost like the pyramid is breathing. Or maybe it's just your own heartbeat echoing in the silence. The desert is funny like that, quiet, but never really still. The wind plays with the sand, shaping dunes into strange, curving sculptures. You pass by an old, half-buried tool, a copper chisel, dulled from years of use, its handle cracked and smooth like driftwood. A few feet away, there's a broken jar, the edges worn soft by time. You imagine someone dropping it, cursing under their breath, maybe muttering about how the gods have cursed the worksite. The thought makes you chuckle. And then, as you reach the pyramid's entrance, you see a small, makeshift ramp, an ancient engineering marvel, really, built from packed earth and limestone dust. The ramp leads up toward a narrow opening, barely big enough for one person to squeeze through. You pause, wondering, would you go in? The air feels cooler here, a faint breeze slipping out like the pyramid itself is exhaling. You take a step closer, and the smell changes. Less of the dusty heat, more like old, closed-up spaces. It's a bit like stepping into a forgotten attic, dry, musty, and faintly sweet, like the smell of papyrus scrolls that haven't seen sunlight in centuries. Somewhere inside, the pharaoh waits, unaware of the drama unfolding outside. Workers are shouting, someone's arguing about whether they should break down the wall they just finished, and a donkey nearby, because of course there's a donkey, decides this is the perfect moment to lie down and refuse to budge. Classic donkey. You let the thought settle in your mind. A king of Egypt, with the power of life and death, stuck inside a glorified stone box, while the animals outside stubbornly ignore the whole crisis. You can't help but wonder, if the pharaoh could see this from the afterlife, would he laugh? Or maybe just sigh and mutter. Typical. The moon climbs higher, casting a soft silver glow on the sands. The pyramid stands tall and silent, a monument to ambition, sweat, and a whole lot of backbreaking labor. You lean back a little, feeling the night air on your skin, and you breathe in slowly, letting the ancient world seep into your bones. It's going to be a long, quiet night. The sand crunches beneath your feet as you wander a little closer to the chaos unfolding outside the pyramid. It's not exactly the kind of well-oiled machine you'd expect from one of the grandest building projects in the ancient world. No, it's more like a bunch of exhausted workers bickering in the dark. You hear them arguing, two men shouting in hurried Egyptian, hands waving, sweat glistening on their brows. One of them is adamant. They've just sealed up the entrance with heavy limestone blocks, precisely as the overseer instructed. The other is frantically trying to explain that the Pharaoh, their god king, is still inside. You stop, blinking, as that thought sinks in. The Pharaoh, the guy with the fancy crook and flail, the one who could command armies with a flick of his ringed finger. He's been walled in like an unlucky tomb raider. Someone must have really messed up the blueprint. A few feet away, the foreman, wearing a kilt streaked with dust and a look of pure panic, clutches a reed scroll like it's a lifeline. He's muttering calculations under his breath, something about the number of workers, the angle of the ramp, the weight of each stone. His voice trembles, barely audible over the rhythmic clink of chisels and the soft creak of ropes under strain. And then, as you lean in, you hear it. A muffled thud, then a faint shout from inside the pyramid. The sound bounces off the stone walls, swallowed by the thick silence of the desert night. The workers freeze. Someone drops a basket of sand, and it spills in a soft hiss across the ground. You imagine the Pharaoh inside, pacing in the dark, his gold sandals slapping against the cold stone floor. Maybe he's yelling for someone, anyone, to come back and open the way. Or maybe he's just standing there, arms crossed, wondering if this is all part of some elaborate ritual he wasn't briefed on. You glance up at the pyramid again, its massive bulk silhouetted against the starry sky. It looks so solid, so permanent, but the truth is it's just a giant pile of carefully balanced rocks. One wrong move, and the whole thing could collapse like a poorly stacked game of Jenga. A breeze stirs the sand, carrying with it the faint smell of sweat, dust, and something almost metallic, like the tang of copper tools and dried blood from scraped knuckles. Nearby, a group of priests in flowing white robes whispers urgently among themselves. They're debating, of all things, whether this was the will of the gods. Was the Pharaoh meant to be sealed inside? A living offering entombed to guarantee the kingdom's prosperity? Or is this just a spectacular mistake, a cosmic blooper that will have everyone's heads rolling by morning? You shake your head a little. Ancient Egypt was wild, wasn't it? A place where you could go from top of the food chain to, oops, we accidentally buried the king, in a single night. And just as you think that, a worker stumbles past you, his hands shaking. He's muttering under his breath about a scarab beetle he saw crawling up the pyramid's side. A sini, he whispers, that the gods are watching. Or maybe just a bug looking for a warm place to nap. Hard to say. You glance at the ramp again, the fresh-cut stones gleaming faintly in the torchlight. The workers built it so they could haul blocks higher and higher, stacking them like a cosmic staircase. But in their rush to finish the day's work, they'd sealed it all up, sealed the Pharaoh inside like a prize in a stone box. The arguing grows louder. Someone suggests tearing down part of the wall. Another protests. What if they damage the internal chambers? What if they collapse the ceiling? And besides, how do you even tell the Pharaoh you messed up like this? You can almost hear the excuses forming. Oh, great one, we thought you had left already. No? Oh, well, awkward. A faint laugh escapes you, and you glance up at the stars again. The sky stretches wide and endless, a blanket of quiet above this ridiculous mess unfolding below. You wonder what the Pharaoh is doing now, deep inside the pyramid's dark corridors. Is he pacing? Is he yelling? Or has he just sat down in the dust, muttering about how no one ever gets his coffee order right either? The workers outside don't know. They only know they've got a problem, and the night is growing colder. The wind picks up, whispering across the sand like a warning. And somewhere inside that stone labyrinth, the Pharaoh waits. You shuffle a little closer, the sand cool beneath your feet now, as the heat of the day finally fades into the chilly breath of the desert night. The stars wheel overhead like ancient watchers, their gaze steady and unblinking. You can almost feel their weight pressing down on the scene. The workers, the foremen, the priests, and on you too. Nearby, a group of priests in their pristine white robes huddles around a small flickering oil lamp, casting long, wavering shadows across the stone blocks. They're whispering in urgent tones, their voices rising and falling like the Nile's gentle lapping at the banks. They're arguing. Of course they are. Some say the Pharaoh's entombment was meant to happen, a divine sign, a fulfillment of ancient prophecies they definitely didn't make up on the spot. Others say this is an unthinkable mistake, a blasphemous act that will anger the gods. You can almost hear one of them muttering, "The gods are probably laughing at us right now, you know." You smile a little at that. The idea of a celestial peanut gallery watching mortals scramble in the sand is oddly comforting. As the debate continues, you catch fragments of their conversation. One priest says the pyramid isn't just a tomb, it's a cosmic staircase, a ladder to the afterlife. Another argues that it's a machine for immortality, its geometry aligned with the stars, the angles precise, the chambers like gears in some great cosmic mechanism. You glance up at the pyramid again, and for a moment, you can almost believe it. The edges gleam in the moonlight, sharp and perfect, as if cut by the hands of gods themselves. Then someone nearby sneezes, loudly, explosively, and the spell breaks. A few of the priests jump, startled, and one nearly drops the oil lamp. You stifle a laugh. The gods might be watching, sure, but they're probably also shaking their heads at the clumsiness of mortals. You step a little closer to the huddle of priests, catching more of their whispered theories. They talk about the stars, especially the bright ones near Orion's belt. They say the pyramid's shafts point directly to them, acting like celestial sightlines for the soul of the Pharaoh to ascend into the heavens. But then, get this, one of them leans in, voice hushed, and says, "Did you know some workers believe the pyramid can talk?" Wait, what? You pause, eyebrows raised, as he explains. Some say that if you listen closely at night, the pyramid hums, a deep, low vibration, like the earth itself breathing. They claim it's the voice of the gods, or maybe the Pharaoh himself, trapped inside and trying to speak. You tilt your head, straining to hear, and for a moment, maybe you do catch it. A faint, almost imperceptible rumble, like the echo of a heartbeat in the stones. Or maybe it's just your imagination. After all, the mind loves to fill in gaps, especially when it's late at night, and you're standing next to a giant pile of rocks built by people who thought fish-shaped amulets could ward off evil spirits. Speaking of which, someone nearby is wearing one. A little fish charm tied with a strip of faded linen around their neck. You wonder if they believe it really helps, or if it's just a habit passed down from their grandmother's grandmother's grandmother. You shuffle your feet, feeling the sand shift under you, and glance toward the entrance. Still sealed, still solid. The workers argue on, their voices rising in frustration, as if sheer volume could solve the problem of accidentally locking the king inside. A faint breeze stirs again, carrying the smell of warm stone, burnt resin, and something sweet, maybe dates or honey. or a forgotten offering left out for the gods. You feel the night stretching around you, long and quiet, a moment caught between ancient stone and an endless sky. The pyramid stands tall, silent, and inscrutable. And somewhere inside, the pharaoh waits, surrounded by darkness, by dust, and by the echoes of chants that no one remembers anymore. The wind picks up again, a soft whisper brushing over your skin like a silken scarf. The sand shifts beneath your feet, and for a fleeting second, you wonder if the desert itself is alive, breathing, sighing, reshaping itself grain by grain. You take a slow step closer to the pyramid's base, and there, half buried in the sand, you spot something glinting in the torchlight. You crouch down, brushing away the fine dust, and reveal a small, worn copper chisel, its edge dulled by years of scraping stone, the handle smoothed by countless hands. You pick it up, feeling the weight of history in your palm. It's warm from the day's heat, but the metal has cooled with the night air, a strange mix of sun and moon, lingering in its touch. It's hard to imagine these simple tools, chisels, hammers, ropes, building something so massive. And yet, here it stands, a monument to ambition, to power, to sheer, stubborn will. Not far from the chisel, you find a frayed length of rope, its fibers twisted and worn. You can almost picture the workers pulling, straining, their muscles burning as they drag stones up the ramps. Someone probably cursed under their breath when that rope snapped, maybe even blamed it on the gods or a bad omen. You glance up at the pyramid again, its sides gleaming faintly in the starlight. It's hard to imagine how they got the angles so precise, each block fitting together like a puzzle. You remember hearing once that if the Great Pyramid were scaled up, it would still be perfectly square within a fraction of an inch. That's ridiculous. But then again, these people had a lot of time and a lot of motivation, especially when your boss is a pharaoh who thinks he's descended from the sun god Ra. You can bet nobody wanted to tell him, "Hey boss, we're behind schedule." The workers' tools scattered across the sand tell stories of their own. A few reed baskets sit nearby, woven so tight you'd swear they could hold water. Except one has a hole chewed right through it, probably by a desert mouse with a taste for papyrus. And then there's the smell. It lingers in the air, a strange mix of heated stone, sweat, and something sharper. Maybe the scent of crushed herbs the priests used for purification. It's not unpleasant, just earthy. You breathe it in slowly, feeling it settle in your lungs, mingling with the faint floral notes of the resin burning in a nearby brazier. As you stand there, you notice a few faint scratches on one of the pyramid's blocks, tiny graffiti etched in by workers long ago. One is a little stick figure holding what looks like a loaf of bread, his arms thrown up in what might be triumph or maybe just a shrug. Another shows a cat, curled lazily, tail flicking. And next to it, is that a fish? You smile. Maybe they were hungry. Maybe it was a joke. "Bring fish or else." Scrawled by a bored stonecutter waiting for lunch. You run your fingers over the rough carvings, feeling the grooves in the stone. It's a quiet reminder that these grand structures weren't built by gods, but by people. Tired, sweaty, sometimes grumpy people who probably just wanted to get home for dinner. A gust of wind kicks up a swirl of sand, and you step back, shielding your eyes. The desert hums around you, quiet, endless, and somehow alive. You glance once more toward the pyramid's sealed entrance, wondering what the pharaoh is doing inside. Is he pacing like a caged lion, or is he sitting quietly in the dark, listening to the distant sounds of arguments, the clatter of tools, and the faint laughter of workers who have no idea they've accidentally trapped their king? You can almost hear the whispers of the past. The workers' voices blend into the desert wind, their words half remembered, half lost to time. Someone mutters about the alignment of the stars, how the pyramid's apex points toward Orion, a marker for eternity. Another grumbles about how the heat is unbearable, and how the gods must be testing them. And you stand there, caught between worlds. The living breathing now, and the ancient unblinking past. The night deepens, and the desert waits. You shift your weight, your feet sinking a little into the soft, fine sand, as if the earth itself is trying to pull you closer, whispering secrets through the grains. The pyramid stands silent before you, its angles cutting into the night sky like the edges of a forgotten dream. Inside, the Pharaoh waits. You close your eyes for a moment, and suddenly, you can almost be there, inside the suffocating dark. The air is heavy, stale, like breathing through linen soaked in old resin. It smells faintly of stone dust, dried herbs, and a sharp, metallic tang that makes your tongue feel dry. The space feels tight, close walls, a low ceiling, and there's this eerie stillness, as if time itself has stopped ticking. The Pharaoh, trapped, reaches for a torch, an old, resin-soaked bundle of reeds, and strikes a spark. It flares for a moment, flickering like a dying star. But the flame is weak. The air here is too thin, too still, as if the very oxygen has been swallowed by the stone. You imagine the flame sputtering out, leaving him in darkness, so thick it feels like a second skin. He waves a hand in front of his face, and it's like trying to see through fog, except this fog is made of pure, suffocating blackness. The walls seem to close in, the air pressing down like a stone slab on his chest. You shiver, though the desert air is warm on your skin. The Pharaoh paces, his sandals scuffing against the smooth, cold floor. Maybe he mutters to himself, the prayers of his ancestors, curses at the workers outside, or maybe just a long, frustrated sigh that echoes in the dark. His fingers trail along the walls, tracing hieroglyphs carved by careful hands, symbols of gods, of offerings, of the sun rising eternal. You wonder if he regrets his design choices now. Maybe the grand vision of his pyramid felt a little less impressive when he was the one stuck inside it. Outside, the workers don't seem to know what to do. Some are sitting cross-legged in the sand, chewing on dry figs and bread, their hands dusty, their faces tired. A few glance nervously at the pyramid, as if half expecting it to rumble or crack open like a giant egg. One of them mutters about the god's wrath. Another says maybe it's a test. If he's truly divine, he'll get out on his own. And someone else, in a voice barely above a whisper, wonders if they should just leave it until morning. A priest nearby frowns, his fingers twitching nervously over the beads of a necklace made of faience and bone. He murmurs about rituals, how they should have burned more incense, offered more myrrh, maybe sacrificed a goat or two just in case. You can almost hear his internal checklist. Incense, goat, chanting, accidental king burial. Yeah, they probably missed a step in the manual. And yet, there's this strange calm settling over the group, like a fog rolling in on a cool morning. The stars glimmer above, ancient and indifferent, while the pyramid looms like a giant, unmoving sentinel. You shift again, the sand tickling your ankles, and a question drifts through your mind. How many other pharaohs got stuck in their own pyramids? Surely this wasn't the only time. You picture a long line of kings grumbling in the afterlife, comparing stories about the one time they got sealed in. Maybe it's like an ancient VIP club. Pharaohs who got stuck and lived to tell the tale. You let out a quiet laugh, imagining them all sitting around a celestial campfire, swapping pyramid horror stories, their crowns tilted just a little askew. The night deepens. The workers' murmurs fade into the soft rustle of sand in the breeze. The pyramid stands silent, its heart holding a secret that no one outside can quite touch. And inside, the Pharaoh waits. The air around you feels heavier now, as if the pyramid itself is drawing in the night, breathing slow and deep, like a slumbering beast. The workers outside have quieted. Most of them, anyway. You hear a few low murmurs, the shuffle of sandals on sand, the occasional clink of a copper chisel dropped by a tired hand. But mostly, it's the quiet that surrounds you now, thick as the dust that clings to everything. You move a little closer to the base of the pyramid, and as you do, you catch sight of something carved low on the stone. It's faint, almost worn smooth by the wind, but you can make it out. A little cat, tail curling up like a question mark, its head tilted in that way cats do when they're deciding whether you're worth their time. Next to it is something even stranger, a crocodile, mouth wide open in a toothy grin, and right beside that, a loaf of bread, just sitting there, carved like a doodle in the margin of history. You pause, squinting. It's as if the workers left behind a tiny, absurd joke. A cat, a croc, and a loaf of bread walk into a pyramid. You wait for the punchline, but all you get is the soft hiss of sand brushing over stone. And somewhere inside the pyramid, the Pharaoh shifts. Maybe he's noticed the stillness too, the way the air feels different now. Or maybe he's lost in thought, fingers tracing the edges of the symbols on the wall. You imagine him standing there, royal regalia weighing heavy on his shoulders, crown slightly askew, muttering under his breath, "I told them not to block the exit until I was out." You wonder if he's remembering the ceremonies, the priests chanting, the smoke of incense curling into the sky, the offerings laid out with care. Figs, dates, beer, a slab of honey cake so dense it could double as a building block. And maybe, just maybe, he's thinking of the workers, the ones who carved little jokes into the walls when they thought no one was looking. The ones who dragged stones so big they must have wondered if the gods were just messing with them. The ones who, right now, are outside debating whether the Pharaoh is alive or if they've just, sealed him up forever. The debate has grown more heated. One of the priests insists that they must wait until dawn, that to disturb the pyramid now would anger the gods. Another is practically begging the workers to start dismantling the wall immediately, voice cracking in desperation. A third quietly suggests that maybe this is all a test, and that the Pharaoh is perfectly fine, just meditating, or taking a nap, or, catching up on his afterlife paperwork. You stifle a laugh. Ancient Egypt was so dramatic, wasn't it? All this grandeur, all these rituals, and yet they still managed to accidentally lock their king inside a giant rock. The cat carving catches your eye again. You swear its little stone eyes are twinkling in the moonlight, as if it's in on the joke. The crocodile, too, its grin impossibly wide, like it's laughing at the absurdity of it all. The loaf of bread? Well, the bread just sits there, stoic and quiet, as bread tends to do. A faint breeze stirs the air, carrying the scent of burnt resin and crushed herbs, mixed with the faintest trace of sweat, sand, and the long-gone aroma of bread baked in clay ovens. It's a scent that somehow feels ancient, like it's been trapped in the stone for thousands of years, just waiting for you to notice. You sigh softly, the sound almost lost in the night, and you can't help but feel a strange kinship with those long-ago workers. Tired, overworked, maybe a little bit silly, carving cats and crocodiles into the side of the most ambitious building project the world had ever seen. The night stretches on, and the pyramid stands silent. The cat, the croc, and the loaf of bread remain, their tiny joke etched into eternity. And somewhere inside, the Pharaoh waits. Patient, perhaps, or maybe just as amused as you are by the whole ridiculous situation. The night stretches, deep and endless, as the stars wheel overhead in their ancient dance. The workers have fallen into uneasy silence, their arguments trailing off like smoke on the breeze. A few of them sit cross-legged in the sand, staring at the pyramid with a kind of quiet dread, while others lean back against limestone blocks, arms crossed, their faces shadowed by the torchlight. You take a slow breath, feeling the cool air fill your lungs, and glance up at the pyramid's massive face. It seems still, too still, like it's holding its breath. The edges of the blocks shimmer faintly under the starlight, and you can't shake the sense that the whole thing is waiting. Poised, listening, a monument caught in the tension of a story that's not quite finished. And then, without warning, you hear it. A low, grinding sound, stone shifting against stone. Faint, but deep enough to feel in your chest, like the distant rumble of thunder, or a giant creature turning in its sleep. The workers freeze. A few glance at each other, wide-eyed. One man slowly stands, brushing sand from his knees, as if ready to run at the first sign of trouble. Another whispers something you can't quite catch, but it sounds suspiciously like, "I told you this place was cursed." You tilt your head, listening. The sound comes again, a slow, shuddering groan, as if the pyramid itself is exhaling, sand spilling softly from cracks, slipping down like the grains in an hourglass. And inside, the Pharaoh waits. You picture him, standing in the dark, the weight of stone above him, pressing down like the weight of the entire cosmos. Maybe he's still pacing, or maybe he's given up, sitting cross-legged in the dust, crown tilted, arms folded across his chest in a silent, royal sulk. Or maybe, just maybe, he's watching the sand trickle in. Fine grains slipping through the cracks like the slow, inevitable passing of time. You imagine him holding out a hand, letting the sand drift over his fingers, the grains catching in the creases of his palm like tiny, ancient stars. Outside, the workers start whispering about omens. One points to the sky, muttering that a certain star has dimmed. Proof that the gods are displeased. Another argues that they should leave the site immediately, that no good can come from disturbing the pyramid at night. And yet another, older worker just sighs and mutters, "It always sinks a little when the air cools. We should have packed the base tighter." Ah, the ever-practical voice in the crowd. There's always one. The wind stirs again, a little stronger this time, kicking up a swirl of dust that dances in the torchlight like a ghostly figure, spinning and twisting before vanishing into the dark. The sound of the pyramid shifting, soft, deep, like a breath caught in stone, fades as quickly as it came, leaving only the steady crackle of torches and the distant yelp of a startled desert fox. You glance back at the little carvings, the cat, the crocodile, the bread, and you wonder if they were warnings, or just jokes, maybe both. After all, who says ancient workers couldn't have a sense of humor? Especially when they're spending years of their lives stacking giant rocks under the blazing sun. Your gaze drifts upward once more. The pyramid stands silent, unmoving, yet somehow alive. You can almost feel its slow pulse, the ancient breath of stone and sand, time slipping grain by grain. And deep inside, the Pharaoh waits, surrounded by darkness, by the weight of his own ambition, and by the sands that never stop whispering. The night deepens, stretching long and quiet across the dunes, and the air feels cooler now, brushing softly over your skin, the whisper of linen robes. You shift your weight, the sand sighing underfoot, and watch as the workers outside the pyramid fall into restless stillness. But not everyone is calm. Near the edge of the worksite, a small group of laborers stands in a loose circle, their voices low and urgent. One of them, a wiry man with a scar running down his cheek, is gesturing wildly, his hands slicing through the air like knives. Another, younger and wide-eyed, clutches a small amulet, a tiny scarab carved from blue-green faience. As if holding on to it, might ward off whatever bad luck is brewing tonight. You listen closely, catching snippets of their conversation. They're arguing, of course. Someone insists that the pyramid is cursed, that the ground itself is rebelling against their work. Another scoffs, muttering that it's just the cooling of the stone causing it to settle. But then, a third voice, quiet, hesitant, says something that makes the others fall silent. Maybe the gods are watching. Maybe they wanted him sealed inside. The words hang in the air like incense smoke, heavy and unspoken. You can almost feel the shiver that runs through the group. A little farther off, a donkey stands, stubbornly refusing to move. Its handler tugs at the rope, grumbling under his breath, but the donkey just plants its hooves in the sand, ears flicking back, and lets out a long, slow bray that seems to echo through the quiet. The handler curses, something about lazy beasts and the gods' sense of humor, but you can't help smiling a little. There's always one donkey who refuses to cooperate, even when the fate of a king hangs in the balance. The priests, too, are huddled together, their robes glowing faintly in the torchlight. They argue in hushed voices, some insisting that they must perform a cleansing ritual immediately, others muttering about whether it's safe to even speak the Pharaoh's name right now. One older priest, his beard streaked with gray and his hands trembling slightly, rubs a thumb over the carved head of a small ivory figurine. He whispers that perhaps the Pharaoh isn't trapped by accident at all. Perhaps it's a sign, a cosmic arrangement, the will of Ma'at, the balance of order and chaos playing out on a scale none of them can truly understand. Another priest shoots him a look and mutters, or maybe someone just counted the stones wrong. You can't help but let out a soft laugh. Ancient Egypt might have been a land of gods and magic, but at the end of the day, it was also full of people. The same old mix of fear, superstition, and good old-fashioned human error. The wind stirs again, cool and dry, brushing over the sand like a sigh. You glance up at the pyramid, its silhouette cutting sharp against the stars, and for a moment, it almost seems to shimmer. Not move, just pulse, like a held breath. And inside, the Pharaoh waits. Maybe he's sitting quietly now, the dust settling on his robes, his eyes closed, trying to remember the exact prayer for protection in confined spaces. Maybe he's picturing his palace, the cool shade of the palm trees, the taste of honey-sweetened beer, the distant sound of music drifting across the courtyards. Or maybe he's simply waiting, patient and still, like the stones themselves, trusting that someone, anyone, will remember he's in there before it's too late. The donkey lets out another bray, stubborn and loud, and somewhere, a worker groans in frustration. A few others exchange worried glances, muttering about omens and ill-fated projects, while the priests glance skyward, their eyes searching for answers among the stars. You shift your feet in the sand, the grains cool and soft against your skin, and feel the night wrapping around you like a dark, endless blanket. And in the heart of the pyramid, the Pharaoh waits. The desert air feels cooler now, brushing against your skin like a soft breath, while the pyramid looms, a silent monolith under the endless sea. The stars glint overhead, distant and untouchable, as if they've been watching this same scene for 1,000 years, perhaps longer. You shuffle a bit, feeling the sand shift beneath you, and your ears catch a new sound, faint but unmistakable, a soft, rhythmic chant carried on the breeze. The priests have gathered again, forming a tight circle near the pyramid's base, their voices weaving together in a low, melodic hum. The scent of burnt resin and crushed herbs drifts toward you, mingling with the cool desert air. The ritual is simple. Hands lifted, palms open, their words a soft murmur of names and prayers. You catch fragments of ancient names. Ra, Osiris, Isis, Anubis. Each name hangs in the air like a whispered spell, delicate and fading. A small brass censer swings gently, its smoke curling like ghostly snakes into the night sky. And then, because the universe loves a bit of mischief, someone sneezes. Loudly. The chant stumbles, voices faltering mid-prayer. A few priests exchange startled looks. One mutters under his breath, and another clears his throat loudly as if to pretend it never happened. You bite back a chuckle. Even in the middle of an ancient ritual, someone's allergies can ruin the mood. You glance at the pyramid again, its face catching the faintest hint of moonlight. It seems so still, but you know better now. The stone holds secrets, echoes, and maybe even a little mischief of its own. Inside, the Pharaoh shifts. He hears the chanting, faint and muffled, like the sound of waves against a distant shore. Maybe it comforts him, or maybe it just reminds him how much he wishes he were outside, basking in the cool night air, instead of trapped inside a giant, fancy box. He's not entirely alone, though. The sounds of the pyramid, soft creaks, faint trickles of sand, maybe even the scurry of a rat or two, keep him company. You imagine a rat's tiny paws skittering across the stone, its nose twitching, its whiskers brushing against the cold, unyielding walls, a little kingdom of its own, hidden in the shadows. Outside, the workers begin to whisper again, their voices low and urgent. They talk of ancient curses, of gods angered by unfinished rituals, of the possibility that this was all meant to happen. One of them points toward the sky, where a faint streak of light, perhaps a shooting star, or maybe just a trick of your tired eyes, arcs across the darkness. Someone mutters, "It's a sign." Another whispers, "Or just a star." A third, with a weary sigh, mumbles, "Stars don't care about us. They've been here long before we came, and they'll be here long after we're gone." That thought lingers in your mind as you look at the pyramid again. How small you feel under the vast, ancient sky. How strange it is that a human, just a man, no matter how grand his title, could command so much stone to rise in his name, and yet still end up trapped inside it, like a fly in amber. The chanting picks up again, the rhythm steady but quieter, almost as if the priests are hoping the gods didn't notice the sneeze. The wind carries their voices, blending them with the soft, distant sounds of the desert, the shifting dunes, the faint scurry of tiny paws, the creak of ropes, the low, stubborn bray of that same uncooperative donkey. You close your eyes for a moment, breathing in the night, and feel the story settle around you like a heavy, ancient blanket. Inside, the Pharaoh waits, listening to the muffled chants, the faint rustle of rats in the dark, and the slow, steady drip of time passing by. The night air cools even further now, slipping over your skin in quiet gusts, carrying the mingled scents of dust, faint resin smoke, and the sharp, dry tang of stone that has been baking under the sun all day. The stars above seem closer somehow, like they've leaned in just a little, watching, waiting, as if they're curious how this strange scene will unfold. You shuffle closer to the pyramid's base, toes sinking into the fine, powdery sand, and glance at the workers huddled nearby. They're restless now, shifting from foot to foot, murmuring quietly, their hands fidgeting with loose ropes, baskets, or small amulets tucked into the folds of their linen. The donkey, ever stubborn, lets out another long, nasal bray, as if reminding everyone it's still not going anywhere, thank you very much. And inside the pyramid, the Pharaoh dreams. It's not a peaceful dream, not quite. In the dark, starless space inside those stone walls, the Pharaoh's mind drifts to the banks of the Nile, wide and endless, the water glittering under a sun so bright it stings the eyes. He sees fields of wheat swaying, the green of life against the dusty brown of the desert, and feels the damp coolness of mud between his toes. But the dream shifts, the Nile overflows, a flood rising, fast and hungry, spilling across the land, swallowing homes, fields, and temples. The Pharaoh watches, helpless, as the water surges up to his knees, then his chest, then his chin. He gasps in the dark, his heart racing, the stone walls pressing in like the flood itself, and somewhere nearby, you hear the softest sound. A faint, scratching noise. It's quick, furtive, the kind of sound that makes your skin prickle. You turn, peering into the shadows, and catch a glimpse of a small shape darting across the sand. A rat, perhaps, or a desert mouse, its eyes glinting like tiny beads. It scurries into a crack at the pyramid's base, disappearing as quickly as it appeared. The workers see it too. One of them mutters something about omens, his voice low and hoarse. Another, trying to lighten the mood, says maybe the rats are the true kings of the pyramid. After all, they can go in and out as they please. A few of the others chuckle, but the laughter is thin, a nervous thread in the quiet. The priests, meanwhile, have grown quieter. They stand in a loose semicircle, their heads bowed, the flames from their lamps flickering low. One of them murmurs a line from a hymn, something about the gods watching from their boats in the sky. And you can't help but wonder if even the gods are shaking their heads at this mess. The sand shifts again, a soft, almost imperceptible hiss, as if the desert itself is sighing in its sleep. You glance up at the pyramid, its edges sharp against the dark sky, and you wonder if the Pharaoh inside can hear the night, if he can feel the stone breathing, the sand moving, the world continuing on without him. You imagine him sitting cross-legged now, breathing slowly, his hands resting on his knees. Maybe he's remembering the festival of Opet, with its music and feasting, the scent of roasted goose and figs heavy in the air. Perhaps he's thinking of his family, with a long line of ancestors stretching back to the dawn of kingship. Maybe he's just thinking about the rats. Your gaze drifts back to the workers, who have settled into small, quiet clusters. A few are chewing on bits of stale bread, their mouths moving slowly, mechanically, as if trying to keep themselves tethered to the moment. Someone yawns long and deep, the sound stretching into the dark. The donkey, because of course the donkey has to have the last word, lets out one final, stubborn bray, then settles into a patch of sand and curls up, utterly unbothered by the chaos around it. And inside, the Pharaoh waits, the dream of the Nile flooding through his mind, the sound of rats whispering in the dark, the weight of the pyramid pressing down in a slow, eternal embrace. The night stretches on, deep and quiet, the desert wrapping itself around the pyramid like a thick, warm blanket. The wind hums low, brushing over the sand in soft, sweeping strokes. Somewhere nearby, a small fire crackles, the scent of smoke curling up into the air, mixing with the faint, dry tang of ancient limestone. You take a slow step forward, the sand cool underfoot, and your eyes catch on something odd near the base of the pyramid. A small, dark opening, barely the width of your hand, hidden behind a loose stone. You crouch down, peering inside, and for a brief, flickering moment, you catch a whiff of something unexpected. Bread. Not fresh, mind you. This is the ghost of bread. Old, dry, a little sour, the scent lingering like a memory in the air. You ease your hand inside, fingers brushing against something hard, and you pull out a small, crumbling loaf, an ancient offering, left behind who knows how many years ago, meant for the afterlife, or maybe just a hungry priest sneaking a snack between shifts. The bread is hard as a rock, its surface cracked like desert mud, but still faintly dusted with something sweet. You turn it over in your hands, feeling the rough texture, the weight of time baked into its crust. Near the loaf, you find a small, cracked jug, the glaze chipped and worn. You lift it to your nose, half expecting the scent of old beer. And there it is, faint, but unmistakable, the yeasty tang of barley, long dried into dust. You sit back for a moment, cradling the ancient loaf and jug, and wonder who left them here. Was it a worker, a priest, someone hoping to slip a little extra something into the Pharaoh's afterlife pantry? Or maybe just a superstition, bread and beer for the journey, because you never know when you might get stuck inside your own tomb. You glance up at the pyramid again, its edges sharp against the velvet sky, and think about the Pharaoh inside. Maybe he's hungry by now, trapped in the dark, dreaming of feasts, while rats scurry past him, twitching their whiskers at the scent of long-forgotten snacks. The priests nearby continue their quiet murmuring, their prayers blending into the hum of the desert. The workers, for the most part, have settled into uneasy stillness, some leaning on their elbows, others fiddling with tools or tracing patterns in the sand. And somewhere, you hear a faint sound, a soft, high-pitched squeak. A tiny rat darts out from the opening you found, a crumb of ancient bread clutched in its mouth. It pauses just for a moment to look at you, eyes dark and glittering, whiskers twitching like tiny question marks, then scurries away into the night. You let out a soft laugh. Ancient Egypt, a land of gods, kings, and rats stealing sacred bread. You set the loaf and jug back into their hiding place, gently tucking them into the dark, like laying a secret to rest. The smell of stale beer lingers faintly, mixed with the scent of dust, sweat, and the faintest trace of incense. The wind sighs again, brushing cool across your face, and you lean back, feeling the night settle deeper, heavier. The pyramid stands silent, watching over you all. And inside, the Pharaoh waits, surrounded by darkness, by crumbling loaves and forgotten jugs, by whispers of prayers and the soft scurry of tiny feet. The night feels thick now, like the air itself has weight, a soft, pressing warmth that clings to your skin. You stretch your legs out in the sand, feeling the cool grains slip between your toes, and glance up at the pyramid once more. Its vast, silent shape looms against the stars, each block a memory, each seam a whispered secret. And inside, the Pharaoh stirs. You can almost picture him now, his fingers tracing the walls, rough and uneven, feeling for something, anything. His nails scrape faintly across the stone, leaving behind thin, pale marks, like a ghost trying to write itself into the story. He's thinking, you're sure of it. Maybe he's going over the names of his ancestors, the long, rolling list of kings and queens carved into the temple walls. Menes, Djoser, Sneferu, Khufu, and now, him. A line of power stretching back through time. And yet, here he is, alone in the dark, no throne beneath him, no courtiers to fan him with ostrich feathers, no musicians playing soft harp music in the background. So he picks up a shard of stone, small, sharp, jagged, and begins to scratch words into the wall. His message isn't grand, no royal decree. It's a desperate, simple plea. Help me. Another line. I am still here. The letters are crude, uneven, hurried. You can almost see the panic in the strokes, the frustration etched into every rough line. He carves a sun, a river, maybe a scarab beetle, tiny symbols in the dark, a message to the future, if anyone ever opens the tomb again. Outside, the workers argue in hushed tones, glancing nervously toward the sealed entrance. One man insists they should break it down, right now, before dawn. Another shakes his head, warning that to do so would risk angering the gods, or worse, collapsing the chamber and trapping the Pharaoh forever. A few steps away, a young worker crouches by the sand, using a stick to draw patterns, little spirals, a crude boat, a fish with a wide, cartoonish grin. You wonder if he's even thinking about the king inside, or if he's just trying to keep his hands busy to stop them from shaking. The priests, too, are restless. They've lit more incense, the smoke curling in lazy spirals, the smell of myrrh and juniper mixing into the night air. One of them is pacing, muttering under his breath, while another stands motionless, eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer. And you sit back, watching it all unfold like a strange, slow-motion play under the stars. The sounds drift around you, the low crackle of the fire, the faint clink of tools, the occasional bray from that donkey who still hasn't moved, as stubborn as ever. You close your eyes for a moment, imagining the Pharaoh's scratched messages inside the pyramid. His fingers are probably raw, the stone biting into his skin, leaving small cuts that sting in the dry air. And yet, he keeps going, over and over, the same words. Help me. I am still here. The sand whispers around you, the night holding its breath. The pyramid stands tall and silent, its secrets locked inside. And the Pharaoh waits, his voice silent, but his hands still carving, still hoping someone will hear. The night stretches on, endless and quiet, as if the world has fallen into a deep, drowsy hush. The wind carries whispers through the dunes, soft and aimless, like a lullaby for the desert. You shift in the sand, feeling it cool against your skin, and glance up at the pyramid's jagged silhouette, its angles sharp and stubborn against the starry sky. The priests are gathered in a tight cluster now, their heads bowed, their voices low and steady. They murmur about the slope of the pyramid, arguing quietly over degrees and measurements, tracing lines in the sand with careful fingers. One of them claims the angle was chosen to mirror the rays of the sun, a perfect path for the Pharaoh's soul to ascend. Another frowns, muttering that perhaps the math was off, just a little, but enough to throw everything out of balance. You can't help but smirk. It's comforting, in a strange way, to know that even in the land of gods and kings, people still argued over the right angle for a giant triangle. A soft, sweet scent drifts past your nose. Myrrh, maybe, or frankincense, mixed with the faint, dry smell of stone and the musky warmth of sweat-soaked linen. You breathe it in, letting the air fill your lungs, and feel the weight of time settle gently around you. And inside, the Pharaoh still waits. You picture him there, sitting cross-legged in the dark, the stone cool beneath him, the silence pressing against his ears like thick wool. His fingers move restlessly, tracing the hieroglyphs etched into the walls. Ankh, scarab, reed, sun, symbols of life, rebirth, eternity. His thoughts drift. Maybe he remembers the last time he stood under the open sky, the sun warming his face, the sound of a harp drifting through the air, the taste of honey cakes still sweet on his tongue. Or maybe he's thinking of the workers, the men who carved these walls, the ones who left behind little jokes, a cat, a crock, a loaf of bread, tiny fingerprints of their humanity etched into the stone. He might even be wondering if they'll come back for him, or if they've already fled, leaving him behind like a forgotten offering. Outside, a worker named Tepi stands and stretches, brushing sand from his knees. His sandals are missing, lost somewhere in the dunes, or maybe left behind in a moment of panic. He looks around, squinting into the dark, and mutters that he's going to try and climb the ramp again, just to see if there's a way to pry the stones loose. The others watch, half hopeful, half afraid, as he makes his way toward the base of the pyramid. He grips the edges of the stones, his fingers white-knuckled, and starts to climb, the sand shifting beneath his feet, his breath coming in sharp, shallow bursts. And then, just as quickly, he slips. A soft grunt, a puff of sand, and Tepi lands in a small, crumpled heap at the bottom, coughing and cursing under his breath. Someone nearby chuckles, a quick burst of laughter that fades just as fast, swallowed by the weight of the night. Tepi sits there for a moment, dusting himself off, and mutters something about how maybe the gods want the Pharaoh to stay inside. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the sounds wash over you. The soft rustle of linen, the faint creak of ropes, the low murmur of worried voices, and the steady, stubborn bray of that donkey who still refuses to move, as if it's watching all this unfold with quiet amusement. And in the darkness, the Pharaoh waits, his fingers brushing ancient symbols, the scent of old incense and faintly sour beer lingering in the air, the sound of sand whispering against stone, and a single question echoing in the stillness. Will they come back for me? The night hums low, a soft, endless vibration that seems to pulse through the sand, the stone, even your bones. The stars glitter above, cool and distant, as if they're leaning in closer, curious to see how this whole strange story unfolds. You lean back a little, feeling the sand shift beneath you, and your gaze drifts toward the base of the pyramid where Tepi sits, still dusting off his knees, still muttering to himself. His hair is mussed, his linen tunic streaked with sand, and one sandal dangles loosely from his foot, the strap half broken. He glances up at the others, a sheepish grin curling at the corner of his mouth, and mutters, "Well, at least I didn't fall inside the pyramid." A few workers chuckle, a small, dry sound that cuts through the quiet. Someone tosses a pebble in Tepi's direction, a soft clink of stone on stone, and he laughs, brushing it away. It's a strange moment, light and fleeting, a flicker of humor against the heavy backdrop of fear and superstition. But not everyone is amused. One of the priests, his robe fluttering in the breeze, narrows his eyes at Tepi and mutters something about disrespect, about how laughter in the presence of the Pharaoh is dangerous, an offense to the gods. Another priest, older, with a beard as white as moonlit sand, waves a hand dismissively and says, "The gods can handle a little laughter." You smile quietly at that. It's a strange human thing, this moment where fear and faith, work and worry, all mixed together under the vast, endless sky. And inside the pyramid, the Pharaoh dreams again. He sees a scarab, its black shell glinting in the dark, crawling across the stone floor like a tiny sacred messenger. It moves steadily, its legs tapping softly against the stone, leaving faint, dusty prints behind. The Pharaoh watches, fascinated, wondering if this is a sign, the gods sending him a guide, or just a beetle looking for crumbs. His eyes drift to the walls, where his own carvings catch the faintest glimmer of his torch's dying light. There's the Ankh, the lotus, the sun disk, and his name, scratched in hurried, uneven lines, a desperate whisper into the stone. "Help me, I am still here." He traces the symbols with his fingertips, the stone cool and rough beneath his touch, and feels the weight of the pyramid pressing down around him. Tons and tons of limestone stacked high above his head. A mountain of ambition, of power, of sweat and stubbornness. Outside, the wind stirs again, a soft sigh against the sand. The donkey lets out a quiet huff, as if reminding everyone it's still here, still unimpressed by all the drama. You glance back toward the group of workers. Tepi is up again, pacing slowly, one sandal flapping, while the others sit quietly, their faces turned toward the pyramid. They look so small, scattered across the sand like tiny, flickering lights. The priests have resumed their soft chanting, their voices low and steady, weaving prayers into the night air. The scent of incense hangs heavy, sweet, sharp, a little smoky, mingling with the faint, sour tang of beer and the dry, dusty breath of the desert. You feel it all pressing in around you, the weight of the stone, the hush of the night, the quiet, desperate hope that somehow, someone will figure out what to do before it's too late. And in the heart of the pyramid, the pharaoh waits, his fingers trading symbols into stone, his breath slow and steady, the tiny scarab crawling in lazy circles near his feet. The wind has shifted now, a little cooler, a little sharper, like a breath drawn in slowly before a sigh. It sweeps across the sand, over the scattered tools and baskets, over the donkey, who, by the way, still hasn't moved, and it brushes softly against your face, carrying the sense of dust, resin, and the faint, fading smoke of the priest's incense. You glance toward the pyramid again, its bulk sharp against the sky, and wonder how many stories it holds, how many secrets are pressed into the seams of those massive stones. Inside, the pharaoh waits. His breathing is slow now, shallow, as if the air itself has grown thinner, as if the weight of the stones is pressing down into his chest. His eyes flutter half-closed, his head leaning back against the cold, rough wall. The dream still lingers behind his eyes, a vision of the Nile, wide and golden in the sunlight, geese swaying at its edges, birds dipping and calling in the shallows. But the dream has changed. Now, in the dream, a figure stands in the distance, a scarab the size of a man, its shell glinting like polished obsidian, its legs clicking softly as it moves. It comes closer, step by step, until it's right in front of him, its antennae twitching, its eyes dark and endless. And then it speaks, not with words exactly, but with a presence, a thought pressed into the space behind his eyes. It tells him that the gods are watching, that the sand remembers everything, and that sometimes the gods send a guide, but sometimes they just send a scarab. You breathe in slow, the night air cool and dry in your lungs, and glance back at the workers. They're gathered in small knots now, whispering, arguing quietly. Tepi is pacing again, his steps uneven, one sandal still flapping with each step. He's muttering about the scarab. "Did you see it?" he asks. "Did anyone else see it, crawling across the stone?" A few others shake their heads, but one older man nods slowly, saying, "I saw it too. It's a sign." A sign of what, though? That the pharaoh's time is running out? That the pyramid is alive in some strange, whispering way? Or that the workers are just exhausted, sunburned, and half-mad from a day spent hauling limestone blocks in the desert? You shift your gaze to the priests, who are huddled closer now, their chants quieter, more rhythmic. One of them is tracing a small scarab symbol into the sand with a finger, his movements slow and careful, as if he's trying to summon something, or maybe just keep his hands busy to stop the tremble. The wind picks up again, a soft swirl of sand brushing over your skin, and the smell of the desert fills your nose. Dry, warm, with a hint of ancient secrets buried deep beneath the dunes. You close your eyes, just for a moment, and feel it all settle around you. The low, quiet voices, the soft hiss of sand against stone, the steady, stubborn breath of the pyramid itself. And inside, the pharaoh waits, his mind slipping between dreams and waking, his fingers brushing the wall, the imagined scarab crawling closer in the dark, whispering secrets in a language only the gods can understand. The air feels heavier now, like a soft, invisible hand pressing gently on your chest. The stars above seem brighter, sharp pinpricks of light, steady and distant, watching as the desert breathes and shifts beneath them. The wind has quieted, just a faint, steady whisper that curls through the dunes like a long-forgotten story. You glance again at the pyramid, its sides rising like a mountain forged by human hands, a monument to ambition, to devotion, to sheer, stubborn will. And you wonder, how much weight does it really carry? The workers sit in loose clusters now, their shoulders slumped, their eyes hollow with exhaustion. A few chew quietly on the last of their bread, the crusts dry and crumbly in their hands. One man fiddles absently with a small amulet, a carved falcon with wings spread wide, running his thumb over the worn edges again and again, as if the feel of it might anchor him in this moment. And then there's Tepi, poor Tepi, who has found a spot on the sand to sit cross-legged, rubbing his ankles and muttering about the pyramid walls, breathing. A few others glance at him sideways, unsure whether to laugh or nod in agreement. But you listen, and maybe, just maybe, you hear it too. A faint, deep creak, so soft it could almost be the settling of the sand, or the stretch of cooling stone, or something else. A sound that seems to echo up from beneath your feet, a low, almost imperceptible hum, like the distant beat of a drum, slowed to a crawl. Inside, the Pharaoh feels it too. He's no longer scratching words into the walls. His hands rest limply on his lap, palms open, fingers loose. His breath comes shallow and slow, his eyes half-lidded, blinking lazily in the dark. He's grown quiet now, his mind drifting like a reed boat on the Nile. Maybe he imagines himself outside again, standing beneath the sun, the smell of lotus blossoms in the air, the distant sound of laughter and chatter drifting through the palace gardens. Or maybe he's thinking of the weight above him, tons and tons of limestone pressing down, stacked by hands that trembled, voices that argued, sandals that slipped in the sand. The pyramid itself seems to lean closer in your mind, as if it knows. The air feels thicker, the silence heavier, like the hush of a temple, just before the prayers begin. You think about the legends, the stories of curses, of tombs sealed forever, of the gods watching silently from the stars above. You wonder if the workers outside feel it too, that strange tight knot in the chest, the sense that time itself has slowed, waiting for something to break. Tepi stands suddenly, brushing the sand off his tunic, and says, with a voice that's too loud in the quiet, "We have to do something." The others murmur in response, some nodding, some shaking their heads. A priest whispers about patience, about waiting for a sign. Another priest glances at the sky, where the moon hangs low and golden, and mutters, "The sign is already here." You lean back, the sand cool against your skin, and feel the weight of it all settle around you. The weight of stone, of time, of prayers whispered into the night. And inside, the Pharaoh waits. His breath is slow, his eyes close. The imagined scarab has vanished, its whisper fading. The air feels tight, as if the pyramid is holding him in its quiet grip, the walls pressing gently inward, the darkness wrapping around him like the folds of a linen shroud. The sand shifts again, a soft, steady hiss, and the night holds its breath. The wind sharpens, a sudden gust sweeping over the dunes, carrying with it a dry, gritty breath that tugs at your hair and whispers against your skin. The workers stiffen, their heads turning toward the horizon as a low, steady rumble rolls in from the distance. Soft at first, like the grumble of an old man's belly, but growing louder, fuller, until it thrums in your chest. It's a storm. The sand rises in slow, swirling eddies, catching the torchlight in golden sparks before snatching it away. You taste the grit on your tongue, feel it sting your eyes, the air thick with the sharp, dry scent of desert dust. Someone shouts, a sharp, panicked cry, and the workers scramble to gather their tools, pulling baskets close, tying down loose fabric. The donkey, ever the stubborn observer of this chaotic theater, snorts once, flicks its ears, and then, finally, lumbers to its feet, as if deciding that now is the moment to get involved. The priests huddle together, clutching their robes, their chants faltering as the sand whips at their faces. One of them cries out, "It's the gods! They're angry!" Another shakes his head fiercely, shouting above the wind, No, no, it's just a storm. But deep down, you know that even a simple storm feels like a message tonight. The sandstorm builds, a roar now, drowning out the voices, the arguments, the prayers. You can't see the pyramid's peak anymore. It's a blurred shape, half swallowed by the swirling sand, like a mountain dissolving into a cloud. And inside, the Pharaoh feels it too. The walls shudder faintly, a vibration that creeps into his bones. A fine stream of sand trickles down from a crack above, landing soft and steady on his shoulder. He brushes it away absently, too tired, too drained to care. The darkness feels heavier, thicker, like it's pressing in on him, filling the spaces between his ribs. Maybe he remembers a time when storms meant fertility, when the floods would bring new life to the Nile's banks. Or maybe he thinks this is the end, the gods closing the book on his story with a final gust of wind and a seal of sand. The workers outside are barely visible now, silhouettes moving like shadows behind a curtain of dust. Tepi shouts something, his voice swallowed by the wind. And you see him gesturing wildly, his hair whipped into a frenzy, his mouth moving, but his words lost in the howl. You taste the storm now, sharp and dry, like the bitterness of old tea leaves left too long in the cup. It fills your mouth, clings to your skin, settles in the folds of your clothes. The sand hisses against the stones, a sound that slips into your ears and stays there, soft and persistent. And the pyramid stands, unmoved. It swallows the storm, the noise, the prayers, the shouts. It swallows the Pharaoh too, his breath shallow, his fingers twitching weakly in the dark. A flash of lightning splits the sky for the briefest moment, casting the pyramid in sharp relief. An ancient mountain, carved by hands long gone, standing silent as the world howls around it. And then the night closes back in, the sandstorm swirling, the sounds muffled, the air thick with grit and fear. And inside, the Pharaoh waits. The storm rages on, the sand whipping across the dunes in wild, angry currents. The air tastes like dust and salt, rough and dry on your tongue, while the wind howls in your ears, a long, mournful sound that feels like it could tear the world in half. You crouch low, arms wrapped around your knees, squinting against the flying grit. The workers huddle in clusters, shielding their faces with their tunics, their voices lost in the roar. The priests have gone quiet, no more chanting, no more prayers, just hunched shapes in the dark, waiting for the storm to decide what to do with them. And the donkey, as if making some grand philosophical statement, simply lies down in the sand, head tucked under its forelegs, ears flicking now and then as if to say, "Let it come, I've seen worse." You glance toward the pyramid, barely visible now, just a looming outline swallowed by the storm. The sand rushes over its surface like a living thing, a snake wrapping around a stone, hissing and slipping into every crack, every seam. And inside, the Pharaoh listens. The storm is muffled here, a distant, rolling hum that vibrates faintly through the stone. The air is still and heavy, thick with the scent of old incense, dust, and the faint, bitter tang of sweat soaked into linen. His breath is slow now, shallow, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on the floor. Spirals, lines, maybe even letters, though it's too dark to see. He feels the sand trickling in, soft whispers against his skin, a light, steady patter that clings to his eyelashes, gathers in the folds of his robes, slides across his lips. It tastes dry, sharp, ancient, and then, as if the storm itself has slowed time, a thought floats up in his mind. A song, a lullaby maybe, or an old hymn he heard as a child, something sung by a nursemaid in the cool shade of a palm grove. He hums it softly, lips barely moving, the sound low and thin, almost a vibration more than a melody. The words blur in his memory, but the rhythm remains. A slow, swaying cadence that matches the beat of his heart. Soft, fading, but steady. Outside, the wind begins to ease. Just a little. The howling, less fierce. The sand falling in softer curtains. The workers peek up cautiously, blinking the grit from their eyes. Someone mutters a prayer of thanks. Another spits into the sand as if to ward off bad luck. Tepi stands, brushing sand from his tunic, hair wild, face streaked with dust, and glances toward the pyramid with a look that's half defiance, half fear. He mutters, "If the gods are angry, they'll strike us down. If not, we dig at first light." A few nod, their faces tight, their eyes wide. The donkey, utterly unimpressed by the drama, shifts slightly and lets out a slow, deep sigh. You let your breath out too, slow and careful, as if exhaling might make the world feel a little lighter. And inside, the Pharaoh's song fades to a whisper. His fingers curl into the dust. The storm's echo lingers, a low hum in his ears, but the silence grows heavier. His eyelids flutter, the weight of the pyramid pressing in soft and steady, 1,000 tons of stone, sand, and memory holding him in place. He hums the last few notes, barely audible now. The sand drifts over him, thin and fine, the song dissolving into the dark. And still, the Pharaoh waits. The air is heavy now, thick with the quiet after a storm. The wind has stilled, the sand settling into soft ripples, smoothing over footprints, erasing the tracks of donkeys and workers alike. It's as if the desert itself has sighed, exhaled, and now lies calm once more, waiting. You shift in the cool sand, brushing grains from your skin, feeling the night air wrap around you like a thin, dry blanket. The workers are quiet too, some staring at the pyramid in silence, others whispering softly, their voices barely rising above the faint crackle of a torch guttering in the breeze. A few of the priests sit cross-legged, eyes closed, breathing in unison, as if trying to will themselves into calm. One of them, the oldest, runs a fingertip in the sand, tracing a slow, looping pattern, a spiral, looping inward and inward, until it vanishes under his fingertip, like water swallowed by a drain. And near the pyramid's base, where the sand has been swept thin by the storm, you see it. Graffiti, scratched into the stone in hasty, crooked lines. Tiny stick figures dance in a ring, arms raised, legs kicked out in mid-step. One has a tiny crown perched crookedly on its head. Another holds a loaf of bread, while a third carries what might be a spear, or maybe just a really large reed. Above them, scrawled in the same rough hand, are a few words in faint, worn glyphs. The gods are watching, but they don't care. You blink, a soft laugh catching in your throat. It's so human, isn't it? This little quiet rebellion carved into the side of a monument meant to last forever. A reminder that even here, in a world of divine kings and cosmic order, someone still had the audacity to leave a joke behind. You glance at the workers, wondering if any of them noticed it. If Tepi did, when he tried to climb the ramp, or if the priests have ever paused their prayers to trace the little stick figures with their fingers. And inside, the Pharaoh rests. He doesn't know about the graffiti. He doesn't know that outside, the storm has passed, the sand has settled, and the workers are sitting quietly, watching the sky. He doesn't know about the donkey, curled in a patch of sand, its ears twitching in a slow, sleepy rhythm. He only knows the dark, the weight of the stone, the feel of sand drifting in slow, soft whispers over his skin. His breath is thin now, shallow, each inhale a little quieter than the last. His fingers twitch faintly, brushing against the floor, stirring a small drift of sand. And still, the pyramid stands, a mountain of stone, of sweat, of dreams and mistakes and stubborn will. The stars gleam overhead, cold and distant, shining down on the tiny figures huddled around their fires, on the sand swirling in quiet, restless eddies, on the donkey, the priests, the graffiti, and on the Pharaoh, silent, waiting, his breath soft as dust in the darkness. The night feels softer now, the desert slowly relaxing back into itself. The air is cool and still, brushing over your skin like a gentle hand, the sand warm beneath you, holding the last trace of the sun's memory. The workers sit in small, quiet clusters, their shoulders slumped, their eyes half closed, watching the pyramid with a mixture of awe, fear, and exhaustion. The priests are mostly silent, their voices hoarse from chanting, their incense burned down to glowing embers, thin wisps of smoke drifting up into the night sky. Even the donkey has fallen still, lying in the sand with its eyes half-lidded, breathing slow and steady, like the desert itself. And inside the pyramid, the Pharaoh waits. His breath is shallow now, each inhale a faint, trembling thing. Barely stirring the air, the sand has settled over him in a thin, whispering layer, clinging to the folds of his linen robes, tracing the lines of his hands, his face. His mind drifts, slow and heavy. He thinks of the river, the Nile, wide and shining, the sun's reflection dancing on the water like molten gold. He remembers the cool shade of the palace gardens, the scent of lotus blossoms, the soft, rhythmic thrum of drums in the distance, the taste of sweet figs on his tongue. But it all feels far away now, as if it belongs to another life, another world. His fingers twitch once, brushing faintly over the carvings in the stone, the last of his strength slipping away. The message he scratched earlier, "Help me, I am still here," feels like it belongs to someone else. The walls around him feel softer now, less like a prison, more like a quiet, dark room where waiting for sleep to come. The sand drifts down in a slow, steady hush, the softest sound in the world. Outside, the workers murmur among themselves. Should they try to break the seal in the morning? Should they leave it be? One priest suggests they wait for a sign. Another shrugs, his eyes heavy with sleep, and says maybe the gods have already given their answer. You lean back, the sand cool against your skin, and breathe out slow, your eyelids fluttering heavy. The stars above seem softer, gentler, somehow, as if they, too, are ready to let go of this long, strange night. The desert is quiet now. The pyramid stands, unmoved, timeless, a monument to everything, to ambition, to mistakes, to hope, to fear. The sand sighs softly as it settles, covering the tracks, the tools, the tiny graffiti of dancing stick figures, and a loaf of bread. And inside, the Pharaoh rests, his breath slow, his body still, the quiet folding around him like linen wraps, like a lullaby, hummed by the desert itself. Your own breath slows, your eyes close. The night grows darker, softer. The stars drift away, the air hums low and steady, and the world begins to blur, fading into a warm, gentle quiet. The sand whispers, the pyramid waits, the Pharaoh sleeps, and you drift into stillness, drift into dreams, drift into the long, deep night.